Human intellectual history is largely the expanding awareness of order emerging from chaos. To understand how reality is structured, we have to discard the idea that the universe is a collection of static things. In continuity theory, existence is a dynamic process. A distinguishable unit appears when a localized organization maintains itself against the surrounding field of possibilities. It is locally maintained differentiation. This chart maps reality's polarity. Dispersion is the tendency to spread, while regulation pulls toward concentration. Systems orient around a balance axis, maintaining a regulated orbit for homeostasis. But crossing the dispersion threshold destroys the organization, scattering it back into a generalized field. Reality, as we recognize it, begins at this intersection. A unit exists strictly because an organization successfully regulates its internal dispersion to maintain a persistent, identifiable state against background entropy. When this dispersion is successfully minimized, what we observe is regularity. The scattered variables align into predictable patterns. Regularity manifests in two primary modes. Form is a static, spatial configuration. Motion is a dynamic, temporal regularity tracking the transformation between states. They do not exist independently, locking together into a continuum, expressed formally as an organized conjunction of form and motion. This mathematical structure means continuity is not a frozen resistance to change. It is the organized persistence of an identity through continuous transformation. Whether you are looking at a planetary orbit or a biological cell, you are observing a low-level continuum. It is maintaining its structural form and its operational motion to remain identifiable. As these continua stack and nest together, their organizational complexity increases. Eventually, a sufficiently complex continuum develops the capacity for recursive awareness. This triggers I/O differentiation. The system splits its internal organization, designating itself as the knower, or I, distinct from the surrounding environment, the known other. Conscious cognition operates by modulating dispersion frequencies. It executes zoom-in and zoom-out operations, shifting resolution from the whole down to the components and back again. Cognition operates in two distinct modes. First, consciousness in form, experienced as intuition. Distributed processing suddenly yields a highly coherent configuration. The solution simply appears. Second, consciousness in motion, experienced as reasoning. The mind explicitly tracks the sequential, step-by-step trajectory between intermediate forms. The human mind comprehends reality strictly by oscillating between these two states, toggling between sudden structural recognition and deliberate logical trajectories. This constant toggling creates a specific cognitive vulnerability. Because the brain evolved to track continuous sequences, it naturally projects those patterns forward, even when the data stops. We operate within an observed domain of testable facts, stepping into an inferable domain of probable nodes constrained by evidence. Eventually, every sequence hits the epistemic existence boundary, where empirical certainty ends. Cognition effortlessly crosses into the extrapolated domain, populating it with vast metaphysical architectures. This yields a strict epistemic rule. Cognitive continuity beyond an evidential boundary does not establish ontological continuity. The fact that the mind can imagine a sequence continuing does not mean reality actually follows it. Science operates differently, institutionalizing the requirement that cognitive trajectories remain tethered to physical constraints. It requires a validation loop. A model can cross the boundary to extrapolate, but it must return to the accessible world and survive testing. Logical coherence and intuitive certainty are powerful organizational tools, but without a functional validation loop reconnecting them to measurable evidence, they remain unverified cognitive maps, not proofs of existence. Scaling up from individual cognition to civilizational structure introduces a new problem. Society consists of millions of highly differentiated units attempting to coexist within a single collective continuum. This requires a meta-order, the order of ordering. It is a structural system that dictates exactly which organizations, values, and authorities rank above others. Ancient civilizations enforced their meta-orders through highly visible vertical cosmologies. Reality was mapped as a strict hierarchy, ascending from earthly elements up toward a divine realm. Even biological attributes were abstracted into symbolic variables. Physical strength was co-opted to represent a deliberate, ranked political authority overpowering the natural world. Natural forces, human rulers, and divine entities were seamlessly integrated into a single, unified chain of command. These ancient meta-orders maintained civilizational stability by personifying authority. Every element of existence was explicitly ranked on an easily observable vertical axis. Modernity did not destroy hierarchy, it simply replaced the visible, linear axis with an invisible, multidimensional ranking field. Look at this variable map. Today, your rank is determined by a complex, simultaneous function of wealth, political power, expertise, and network visibility. Global financial markets act as the ultimate ordering mechanism. By mapping radically different entities, labor, art, land, and code, onto a single numerical coordinate called money, the system standardizes value across domains. Digital systems take this further, automating the recursive meta-ordering. Algorithms organize the data and dictate the hierarchy, completely removing the human observer from the trajectory of logic. This creates a self-amplifying feedback loop. Cultural visibility dictates perceived importance, which translates into economic value, which then buys even more visibility. We now live inside the resulting order of these digital systems, consuming the ranked outputs without ever consciously accessing the operational motion that generates them. The pervasive anxiety of the modern era stems directly from this gap. Society feels chaotic only because its regulatory complexity has far exceeded our individual capacity to zoom out and perceive the structure. Yet the base mechanism remains exactly the same. From the stabilization of subatomic particles to the global architecture of algorithms, existence depends entirely on the continuous minimization of dispersion. The universe is not a rigid collection of objects. It is a hierarchy of nested regularities undergoing highly organized transformation. To understand it, we just need to rigorously calibrate the resolution of our own consciousness.